Hey guys, so it's about time I do another Tales ranking video. With the announcement of Tales of Grace's F being bound for modern systems, there seems to be a bit of life back in the series. So today I want to look back on arguably one of the best aspects of the Tales series, and that is the characters. Throughout the series' ups and downs, Tales has always had a knack for some extremely entertaining characters, and some, let's say, less than entertaining characters. So today I want to go over my personal favourite characters and least favourite characters from each mainline Tales game. For this list, I'll be just sticking to the playable party members and will thus avoid villains and side characters. I will also be focusing on the characters and their role in the story, and less so about how they play in combat. However, I will factor that a bit into my final rankings. To also make this more of an interesting list, I'll exclude the game's protagonists, as being the main character gives them an unfair advantage. So to keep it as an even playing field, let's discuss my favourite and least favourite party members who aren't the protagonist. Also, a slight spoiler warning for some of the games. Now, I haven't had the chance yet to play the remake of Tales of Phantasia either on the PlayStation 1 or PSP, so I'm going to base these opinions strictly on the Super Famicom original, and to be honest, I've always loved Archie out of all the characters. She's just so unique with her puffy pants and the fact that she rides around on that broom, and also being the main caster of the party, she was also definitely a massive help when it came to battle. Now, so it might not surprise you to find out that Chester is my least favourite character. When you're not present for almost half the game, it's kind of hard to get to know Chester. Worse, he's kind of the weakest person in the party due to his lack of AoE spells and healing abilities. Call me a teenage girl, but I just love Leon from Tales of Destiny. He's arguably the most interesting character in the game, especially with his actions at the start of the game's second act. I also love his hybrid role in battle, being both a melee fighter and spellcaster. Meanwhile, Destiny is not light on a roster of bloated cast members who really should be in the party. None so more than Chelsea. Where do I begin with this child? Out of all the non-Swordian party members, she's the only one without a dedicated part of the story focused on her. Along with this, she has a really annoying voice in the PS2 version which drove my friends mad playing this game, so she's an easy last place for all of us. Like Tales of Destiny, Tales of Eternia also has a cast split between important characters and random recruitable side characters, so it's no surprise that my favourite character is one that comes from the four main party members, and thinking about it, I think I have to go with Farah. While I like Meredy and Keel, it once again comes down to Farah being more fun in combat. Plus, with this sort of being Reed's love interest in the game, she sort of gets a special role in the plot. With Reed often being lazy, it's often up to Farah to drive the plot in the early game, and this is what gives her the edge over the other two. On the other end of the scale, it's no surprise to find that my least favourite party member is one of the three guest characters, and I think Razius is unfortunately the weakest choice. Out of all the three guest characters, he's the only one not playable in the late game, plus he doesn't quite have the humour of Max and Chat. While I still like Razius, he unfortunately stacks up as my least favourite in the Eternia cast. Now, why I have played Tales of Destiny 2, it was quite a while ago and I used a fan translation guide, so I think I'm not super confident in giving my opinions on this, so instead I've decided to defer my opinions to someone who is an expert in all things Tales of Destiny 2, so let me introduce you to Simon Lau of the Tales Facebook fan group, who says, "My personal favourite character in Tales of Destiny 2 has to be Harold. I've always liked the wacky funny scientist thing they have going for her, and I also like how she's the brains of the group. During the end of the game, she plays such a key role in figuring out how to stop the enemy when they get the upper hand." As for my least favourite character, it's a hard decision, but I have to go with Rayla, and a lot of that comes down to the early game, where she's just so cold and dismissive of Kyle, despite all that he does to try and help her. However, I do like that they do make amends later on. Once again, thank you Simon for your response, and you can check him out in the Tales Facebook group, where he, along with a bunch of other Tales fans, are always happy to talk about everything Tales. When it comes to Tales of Symphonia, I probably have to default to the popular choice of Kratos. What can I say? He's awesome! Plus he's massively significant to the story with his connections to Lloyd and Mythos, and to top it all off, he's one of the best characters to play in combat outside of Lloyd himself. So yeah, it might be a generic choice, but at the end of the day, he's just freaking Kratos. Now, some of you might recall I'm not the biggest fan of the Tethayala cast, which might not surprise you that I've chosen Regal as my least favourite character. I know he has his fans, but he's introduced so late into the game into a cast that's already kind of bloated, so I really struggled to get invested into his character. He's also not exactly a fun kind of character like Zelos, nor had a big amount of time to get familiar with the party like Sheena, so unfortunately he sits right down at the bottom of my list and is usually someone I don't put into the battle party. Look, as another Japanese entry that I haven't played in a while, Tales of Rebirth like Tales of Destiny 2 is another game I struggle to rank the characters in. While I like a lot of the characters, I think my personal favourite has to go to Annie. Now, I know she gets a lot of hate for her racist views, but this character flaw makes a lot of sense if you look at the context of the game. Plus, over the course of the game, she learns to overcome these views, and in fact is able to fight it back against the mass discrimination which occurs in the latter part of the game. Also, I just love how cute her design is in the instruction manual. As for my least favourite character, it's a toss-up between Taitri and Hilda, and I think Taitri unfortunately loses the edge to Hilda. With Hilda being a half, she has a very big stake in the plot. Meanwhile, Taitri is kind of just there for a lot of the game. He doesn't quite have the same story arcs as your Vagues and Annies, nor is he super instrumental to the plot like Mal or Eugene. He's also one of my least favourite characters to play in combat, so there's that too. Look, I love Legendia's cast being somewhat of a bunch of idiots, but at the end of the day, someone needs to be the adult in the room, and that's why Will is my favourite character in the game. Also, being the first party member to join Sentinel in game allowed me to really get to know Will, and he's always been a valued member of my party, with his strong leadership abilities, while still being just as funny as the younger members of the cast. Now, it might also surprise you that one of my least favourite characters is also another one of the old characters. Well, from what we know about her age. Grun, much like Rigo and Chelsea, just felt like one too many characters being tacked onto an already bloated cast. She kind of just shows up out of nowhere and has little impact on the game's story. I heard she might have some more importance in the post-game, but I haven't actually had the chance to play that. Feel free to tell me in the comment section if Grun does get some more interesting stuff to do in the post-game. Tales of the Abyss is around the point where I struggled to make these ranking choices, as all the characters are great. However, if I had to choose, I think the character I had to put as my favourite has to be everyone's favourite Necromancer, Jade. From his witty remarks to his ability to outsmart his opponents, Jade is always someone I like seeing on screen. What makes this character even more interesting is the revelation that Jade is someone who lacks the ability to feel genuine empathy, thus revealing why he has such a trolling nature due to covering up for his messed up mind. On the other end of the scale is Annis. While she is also somewhat of a troll character, she doesn't quite work in the same way as Jade, and just comes across as a bit more of an annoyance than a funny character. She's also kind of the least important character in the plot, which also doesn't do her much favours. Again, while I don't hate Annis, she's definitely the weakest character in the cast in my opinion. Well, jumping to the other end of the quality scale, we have the Tempest cast, and I'm going to make it quick. I think Ruby is the best character. Sure, she jumps wildly from being Caius' partner to enemy, but at least that makes her interesting. Also, her flower dress is arguably a very unique design choice, especially in a poor looking DS game. On the other hand, Arya is probably my least favourite character. As you're probably catching on to now, it's once again a late introduced character who unfortunately just cannot deliver the same impact as the characters introduced earlier. Also, with Ruby kind of already filling in the casting role, Arya plays a second fiddle to her. Either way, let's get on to some better games. Like a lot of other Tales games, Tales of Innocence is another one which you can easily split the cast in two, with the big three being Luca, Iria and Sparta, and the lesser five being Arndt, Ricardo, Hermana, Conway and QQ. Of the big three, Sparta has probably emerged as my favourite, in part due to me often playing him over Luca in combat. But outside of that, Sparta ends up being Luca's strongest ally throughout the game, always having his back and turning Luca from a cowardly boy into the hero by the end of the game. Meanwhile, of the lesser five, I think Hermana is probably the weakest of the cast. Oh, what do you know, it's another character introduced quite late in the game. Hermana has the issue of being stuck between being a mother character in a past life, now reborn as the youngest character in the group. As a result, her role in the plot is confusing. Is she the paragon figure, or is she sort of the child character who learns? Also, add on to the fact that she's one of the hardest physical fighters to play in the game, so she's often someone I don't put into my party. Look, do I even do this game? If we exclude the Symphonia characters, I'm only really left with two options, so here it is. Richter is awesome and my favourite, while Marta sucks is my least favourite. Done, let's move on. Now, Tales of Vesperia has a special place in my heart with being my first Tales game. Until this day, Rita has always remained my favourite character in the party. I love her no-nonsense approach to characters like Yuri and Raven. Plus I love how frequently she uses spells in the game's cutscenes, which is a nice change from other casters who only seem to bring out the spellbook when battle starts. Finally, I love her relationship with Estelle and how the two grow together, with Rita becoming less antagonistic with the other party members, but never quite losing her feisty side. On the complete opposite end of the characterization, anyone who watched my Vesperia retrospective would know I really don't like Judith. For the whole game, she radiates this annoying superiority complex, with her refusing to tell the party what she's up to. And when her plans finally do get exposed, she doesn't really seem to acknowledge her faults and just keeps on going as usual. Also, she's an absolute chore to play in combat. Now, this might be an unusual pick, or an understandable pick if you follow my trends, but I really like Hisui. With Core/Sing being somewhat of a klutz in the early game, Hisui comes across as the real impassioned adventure with his mission to save his sister, which also as the older brother of a sister, resonates quite strongly with me. Also, as time goes on, he forms a really strong relationship with Core, and the two basically form a bromance, and with him being the main healer, he's also a frequent mix in my party. Also, I dig the ski goggles and finger guns. As for the worst character, I think I had to go with charcter. Perhaps I'm putting him here because I never really liked his name or character design, but I just never really got invested into his story. Yeah, I don't really have much to defend this one. Look, when you have to do 18 of these things, you're going to struggle to justify at least one of your answers. Now, I did my Tales of Grace's F playthrough in multiplayer sessions with friends, and I normally played Sophie, so it's no surprise that she is my favourite character. And even putting my biases aside, she's practically the poster girl in this game, with her acting as the plot device which brings all the other party members together, so I think I can quite confidently go with Sophie as my favourite. On the other hand, we have Malik. And while the F chapter does do a lot to fix his character, we unfortunately still have to deal with the main game, where he is one of the most boring and forgettable characters ever added to a Tales game. A real shame too, because he is an incredible caster in combat. Now, I'm going to throw both the Xillia games together, as otherwise my character pools for both games would be too small. Thus, out of all the party members, I'm going to have to go with Alvin as my personal favourite character. As someone who loves witty troll characters like Jade and Yuri, Alvin was always going to be a popular choice for me. Plus, his questionable loyalties always kept his true motives throughout the game up in the air. Even in the sequel, Alvin remains quite the interesting character with his plans to develop business relationships between the lands of Riza Maxia and Olympius, and the struggles that come with that. Altogether, a really solid character. Now, I really want to put Tipo here as the worst character, but unfortunately he's not exactly playable, so instead I'm going to go with the party member who brought Tipo into the party, Elise. Even looking past the fact that she brought the most annoying sock puppet into the old party, Elise isn't exactly the best child character in the series. Sure, her design is cute, but at the same time she can be quite bratty, and her voice is also irritating at certain times. While Xillia 2 fixes a few of these issues, she unfortunately in my opinion remains the weakest of the cast members in both Xillia games. For the most part, I like Zestiria's cast quite equally, so my final decision comes down to sort of my own personal choice, and I'm once again going to have to channel my teenage girl as I put Mikleo as my favourite character. I just have this thing for Tales bromances. With Story being somewhat of a klutz-like core, Mikleo again fills the role with a more serious, determined adventure, and I kind of felt sorry for him as he was often made the punching bag by the other characters. But the fact that he was with Story from the start of the game right up until the final cutscene is something I cannot help but love about him. On the other hand, I don't think putting Drezl at the bottom is too controversial. When you're only in a portion of the game before being killed and replaced by the much more entertaining Zavid, you don't really stand a chance. Drezl unfortunately joins Alicia as yet another Zestiria character, unfortunately undermined by the developers' strange choices around this game. Let's see, this list is mostly troll characters introduced early in the game, so that's why my favourite Tales of Berseria character is obviously Eleanor. Just kidding, it's Margilu. What can I say, she's arguably the most entertaining character in the whole series, and that design is iconic, with the skirt made of grimoires. Margilu also acts as a great contrast to the game's darker elements, being the more comedic element, but with a naturally darker tone. And she's also just a joy to watch in the cutscenes. On the other hand, I don't think it's much disagreement with people when I put Rokuro at the bottom of the list. While as a standalone character, Rokuro is great, he just cannot stand up to the incredible characters in this cast. His whole motivation is built around trying to kill his brother just because his brother is better at swordplay is just such a petty motivation, and his comedy just can't quite match Margilu. While I think he would be a great addition in any other Tales cast, in Berseria he's definitely the weakest. Going from one of the best modern Tales casts to one of the weakest, we have the Arise cast. Of the party members, I think I'm going to have to put Dohalim as my favourite character, simply because he's arguably the only non-main character to have a role to play in the late game, with him helping to destabilise Renan society as it descends into chaos. I also feel like he fits the role of a reformer better than his fellow Renan Shion does. In general, Dohalim is quite the unique character in a game full of somewhat lame characters. On the other hand, I think I have to put Rimwell last. When Arise got announced, I really liked Rimwell's design and thought she was going to be my favourite character, but after meeting her in the game, she really turned me off with her bratty nature. Unlike Rita, who responded hilariously to actually being driven up the wall, Rimwell often seems to respond angrily to non-existent issues that just makes her come across as insufferable. I do feel like Arise really missed a troll character who would not only have made the cast more interesting, but have actually given Rimwell something to bounce off. But unfortunately we never got that, so Rimwell's unfortunately at the bottom of this list. And with that, we've come to the end of my list. What do you think? Do you agree with my rankings, or are you annoyed that I put your favourite character at the bottom of my list? Feel free to leave your comments down below about your favourite and least favourite characters. Until next time, I'll see you later.